There we go. So it will tell you you're being recorded.
Right. Okay.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't
You
care.
have to leave.
Yeah, all these stupid rules about consent and that kind of stuff. Who gives a toss? I meant to have a sign somewhere around my laptop which says "Don't swear."
No, but you see, that's the beauty. I don't mind. I think as long as we're like within a parameter, I don't mind a bit of swearing.
No, but I need to know what words are going to get you in trouble where you publish it, because I don't, when I'm at work, I don't swear ever. I have never run a training course or done any kind of consultancy work where I've suddenly started effing and jeffing.
Yeah.
But when I'm not in the work mode, I just swear. And I thought with something like this, you don't be having to put content warnings on. It's a bit much. Or editing. I mean, no, my thing is, do not make you have to edit. That is my only wish.
That's all right. We can do that. I think if we avoid the F-bomb, I think, shit's all right.
Oh, well, in that case, I should have a list. Can I say bollocks?
Yeah. We're only on we're on YouTube, and we're on well, that's it actually. We just point to it from LinkedIn. Yeah. So yeah.
No, I shall try and maintain a professional and appropriate vocabulary at all times.
I mean, I'm excited that you're here, because more than anything, I actually want to get to know the real Tim Turner. So I'm already enjoying, because I think you have this persona online, this sort of crime fighting, information rights superhero that likes to call out the bullshit and challenge people. And I just want, I want to know, are you always the man that complains in the shop, or are you actually quite light-hearted and it's just this that it's just information rights that's your thing?
I don't complain in shops, but I don't know. The thing is, I have this thing with the persona. There's so many people who've said to me, oh, you're so much nicer in real life. And it's like, you met me at work. So I wasn't going to be a complete authentic version of myself because we were at a conference or on a training course, when I am not likely to be pointlessly provoking people and doing all that kind of stuff. And so I think there is an element to which the version of me on LinkedIn and on Twitter is me turned up to 11, but the version you meet at an IRMS conference is me turned down to 4. I am not going to be, tell them, because usually I've been invited by somebody and they'll tell me off if I'm rude. So it's a difficult balance. I wouldn't say I am like I am when you encounter me at my worst/best, depending on how you feel about it. I wouldn't say I'm like that all the time, but it isn't something I put on. It's something I hold back when I'm in other situations. So I can not do it, but that's not really me being myself. It's just there's some certain things I care about and certain things I don't. So I don't get angry in shops because I can't think of a shop situation I'm not bothered about.
I was going to say, it's a passionate thing, because this is what you're passionate about. And I was just crawling through your LinkedIn, and you've got a master's in information rights law. You've been doing this nearly 20 years.
20 years next year.
From the ICO days, you've always been in public sector. You've always been doing data protection or freedom of information. This is your bag. You care about this.
There's an extent to which that's true, but also I'm just not very good at dealing with bullshit. And if you have, let's say you have a data protection officer doing their best and struggling with various things, and they end up making a mistake or saying something that is not one of those things where you disagree with them, where they've just got it wrong.
Yeah.
I think it is unacceptable to have a go at them because they're just in a job, giving advice to one organization. But when you see someone who has set themselves up as an authority or an expert or a specialist, when they don't know what they're doing, that's bullshit. And a lot of people don't want to draw attention to it. And I can't help myself. So it's not that I go around just randomly picking fights with people. It's people who have put themselves in the position that I've put myself in and that you've put yourself in as an advisor to others. And I think it's that where it is reasonable to expect that you know what you're doing. And I hate to break this to you, but there are people in this sector who don't know what they're doing. They're idiots. And people don't like to call them out. And I don't know what I've lost by doing it, but I don't feel like I've lost anything.
No. And I wouldn't say I think as an industry, we've gained a sort of like information rights Batman that just sort of swoops in. We all see stuff and we see people post stuff, and I think we all secretly sit there going, he's gonna come. He's gonna turn up. Because people don't like to call people out because it's not, it's not British.
The thing is,
sometimes
it's interesting you pick Batman, because Batman is a spoiled trust fund vigilante. I like the Joker. The Joker, working class artist, trying to express himself. Batman's a fascist. I'm definitely more of a Joker. I've just realised you're drinking water.
I know. Well, I ran out of rum, and I've only got wine. And I thought 2:00 on a Tuesday is quite early to have a wine. Oh, you're having a beer.
I'm not having a beer. I am having Capital, which is Belgian. And I'll just see if you can put the camera there. Can we see? See them monks on the bottle? I was going out for. Oh, there we go. You see the monks sitting around, having a beer, getting wasted, because that's what being a monk's about. Drinking beer. But anyway, no, I thought Barry drank, so I thought if Barry's.
I feel like I need some booze now. Is it inappropriate to run and get a glass of wine?
Well, that's up to you.
People are going to care. Do people care?
I don't know.
I don't know. We can edit it. We'll cut it. Wait there. This is the only editing I'm ever going to do. Yes.
There we go.
Always said I will never edit. We'll cut that. That's the bit that we'll do.
That sounds reasonable.
Mm. Oh, God, that's bad. So where were we? Batman.
Batman.
You're more the Joker.
And I think the thing is that I can't pretend that some of it isn't just the mischief. There's a series of people. FOI has more of this. A series of applicants who are that we're not supposed to say they're vexatious. It's the requests that are vexatious, not the person. But there is a type of applicant, and I've gone after them a few times. And made complaints about their on What Do They Know, which is an FOI website, and I've ended up having run-ins with a few of them. And I have a friend who thinks that the reason why I'm quite good at dealing with vexatious applicants is that my life didn't take the turn that makes me one of them. That in another life, I would be one of these angry middle-aged men battering the local council with endless requests about parking.
Yeah.
And it's because my life took a different turn that I'm not one of those people, but I still have the mentality. I'm a vexatious person. I've just put my vexatious energies into something else. So I don't know. I don't have that filter, the filter you were talking about before. I don't have that. I don't have the voice that says, you shouldn't say this.
Yeah.
And there are many situations in my professional life where I wish I did. Where I wish I'd had the sense to keep my mouth shut. But I don't have that.
But it's not done you any harm, is it? Let's be honest.
There are people in the industry, in the sector. There are people who won't talk to me. There are people who will, actively not recommend me, even though they think I'm good at what I do, because of arguments I've had with them. So there's probably business that I've lost.
Yeah.
But there's enough business to go around, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, we talk. It's such a small community that we work in, and you see, people talking, and we see when your courses are posted, and the number of people that I know, seasoned practitioners, that look to your courses to give them an update and give them advice. It's your level of knowledge and your level of understanding is, out there compared to a lot of people in the market. People like myself come to your courses to get a better insight, to get better understanding. So in the one sense, what you lose, does it really matter if you're still appealing to the people that that really take an interest?
It does. In the business sense, it doesn't matter. There are people who I kind of wish I still had a working relationship with, but because of arguments I've had with them, that's not that's not possible. Actually, I'm thinking there's one or two people, but the thing is that I've gradually moved further and further away from being controlled by an employer or by someone I work for a lot. So I've ended up at a point where I only work for myself and I don't answer to anybody else. And the freedom that gives you, I think, is incomparable. There's nothing as good as just being able to decide what you want to do. And there are consequences for that in the terms, there are situations where I wish I'd kept my mouth shut, or I wish I'd put something a bit more diplomatically. But I'm far too old now to learn diplomacy. So it's just a feature of what I do. I think we should go back to the bit where you just say how amazing I am, because that was great.
You just do just like stroking your ego, though. It's not. We need insights. We need information and knowledge. You spent majority of all of your career has been in the sort of public sector.
Yeah.
So you're always in councils. You're always doing the FOI. Do you think that when this all kicked off and everybody started getting excited, do you think the public sector was already prepared because they were used to doing this kind of stuff, or do you think it caught them off guard? Because we still see that skills gap in terms of who's got the knowledge and in terms of the practitioners that really understand what they're doing, and then the people that came later.
I think
public sector would have been more ready for it.
They should have been. I mean, the thing is, there was a lot of turnover. And so quite a lot of public sector organisations were left with a gap. Like I worked for a council for 6 years, which is the longest job I've ever done, longest time I've ever spent anywhere. And it's the best job I've ever had. After I left, they decided that filling that job was going to be an expense that they didn't need, even though they'd had me there for 6 years and had all the advice and all the benefit of that. And they didn't replace me. Now, various people have been in and out of the organisation since, but I think they still see it as a luxury item. So there are public sector bodies which always had somebody there, and they're embedded and they've created a culture and they've done very well. But there are organisations who, as soon as somebody moves, they think we can save money. And so I think it's very, very patchy. It should have been the case the public sector could say about GDPR, well, we've been doing the 98 Act. We know how that works. Councils, for example, get the most complex subject access requests that anybody gets. Looked after children, subject access requests, or mental health in NHS. They're more difficult. I meet people. There's another one where I have to keep my gob shut. I meet people talking about the really difficult subject access requests that they're dealing with. And it's like, give me a break. You're talking about a bog standard HR job where somebody might have called somebody a tosser in an email. That is nothing compared to the incredibly complex family relationships and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, public sector should have been really ready. Some were, some weren't. Because I think austerity meant that jobs didn't get filled. And so, people got caught off guard just as they did everywhere else.
Because I remember doing, back in my home serve days, I remember doing a SAR and I'd done a post and I was like, it was a stack of paper like this. And I remember posting it on LinkedIn, and you were one of the people that commented. It was like, that's nothing. I did one that was 1,500 pages or something, whatever it was. Do you think
I'm sure I was diplomatic.
Yeah. Do you think there's, is there something that the private sector can learn from the public sector? Because whenever we go to conferences, and I think it has its reasonings, like you have like a public sector room and you have like the vendors and the private sector stuff, but you never really see the private sector guys go in the public sector bit, because you think, oh well, that's public sector, oh, I'm in banking, I'm in financial services. But actually the complexities of what gets dealt with in the public sector and how that gets done could really be of benefit to the private sector.
I think both sides could learn from each other. I think you're right that there isn't a lot of crossover. I've just been dealing with someone who was a local authority data protection person and is now working in for a big retailer. And I don't think that happens very often, and I think it's a shame. But I think it's a shame the other way around as well. I think both sides deal with different things in different ways. There's a lot. The private sector is a lot more IT driven. There's a lot more use of the stuff you were talking to Tash Whitaker about. You know, the software, dedicated software. You don't see as much of that in the public sector as you do in the private. And to the extent that those things are good, and you know, I have my skepticism about some of them, but anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But I think there's a lot that both sides could learn. But I think the idea that this is new, that I find very difficult. And as a public sector person who handled the first subject access request I did was in 2002. The actual one I handled was 2002, and people have been doing it for far longer than me. You know, there's a few people I know who were veterans when I started, and they're just about getting towards retirement. They were doing subject access requests in their 90s. You know, they were doing requests under the 84. They were dealing with requests under the 84 Act. Now that'll be true of people in banking. That'll be true of people in finance and things like that who regularly got subject access. So it's not that that's an exclusively public sector thing, but I think it has always been very divided. I was thinking about the industry, and it used to be just a bunch of lunatics like me and lawyers, and we never spoke to them. There were the people who went to the Data Protection Forum. And there were the people who went to the NADPO events, and Forum was largely private sector, and NADPO was mainly public, and the odd public sector person would go to the Privacy Laws and Business Conference in Cambridge, because this was all there was, you know. And yeah, I am going to deal with that by saying nothing about Privacy Laws and Business. Another thing I promised myself is I wouldn't mention anybody's name, and I've already dropped a few. But you know, I think that's the thing. The one thing I'll never get over is the element of surprise that GDPR apparently represented, because the 98 Act bit everybody, and the 84 Act, which I had no experience of, bit a lot of people. So that's the one. The fact that this is a revelation. It's like, no, it's not. It's been part of the furniture for a long time, and that's the thing I've always found hard to reconcile about the way GDPR was sold, as if it was revolutionary, because it wasn't.
Yeah, it was nothing really changed. There was a couple of bits that were added, but in essence, the basics were there. That's what always amazed me. So, like, my career was always in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, so this was already, you know, bog standard. So when I moved into financial services, it's like, well, you obviously, you're going to have assessments, you're going to have a risk register, and they're like, no, like, but you've got to have, because, why wouldn't you? You've got 4 million customers. Like, no, like, oh, well, that's all right, that's fine. We can sort it, and it just takes that sort of time, doesn't it? I think the thing that still lacks is that general awareness. Like, how do you educate people? Like, we always get asked, like, what's your advice for encouraging a business to do better? And there isn't any. It's just, if they want to do it, they'll do it. But for what you do, I mean, because you're a trainer by trade now, 10 years at it, you've now been put in a world where human contact is reduced. It's you can get people in a room anymore. Do you think we're gonna lose that ability to create awareness now, because it's just harder to train online than it is to train face to face?
Yes. I mean, I think it's a thing that I've had to reconcile myself to that. I keep having conversations with people where they say face-to-face training is going to come back and face-to-face consultancy. I do more training than I do consultancy, but I do a bit of consultancy. And people say, oh, it's going to come back. It's definitely going to come back. And it's going to be, this quarter or this time, but it's going to come back. And every conversation I've had, the person isn't trying to convince me.
Yeah.
They're trying to convince themselves. Because I think the psychological impact of the last 10 weeks is going to be significant. But I think people will want to get back. They will want to interact with others. But I think businesses and employers will say, look at how much money we can save. And you will be able to tell them until you're blue in the face that face-to-face is better and that attentiveness online isn't as good and online training is more exhausting because, there's so many more distractions. But I think there'll be a lot less. So to be as unpessimistic as I can be, there'll be a lot less of it. So all of us who do specifically face-to-face training will all be chasing a much smaller number of people, and we'll either do online or we'll do something else. Because I don't think you'll be able to sustain a business doing face-to-face training. And in the way that I used to do 95% face-to-face, in-house or public, and a bit of online, because every now and again it's nice to earn a bit of money sat at your desk.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be the case in the future. Now, maybe I'll be the lucky one who sustains a face-to-face training business. Maybe I won't. Maybe, one of the bigger providers of training who are more slick and have bigger mailing lists, maybe they'll be the ones who hoover up what work there is, and I'll have to do something else.
It just makes me sad though. Like the concept of, I'm a people person. I like seeing people. That's why I started doing this, because I just wanted to talk to people. I hate the idea of just, not being able to sit in a room with like-minded people, like not being able to go to the DP forum, like IRMS being online, not being able to be physically trained by somebody, not obviously physically trained, but in a physicality sense. It just makes me sad that that's what the world might end up like, because there's so much to be given through eye contact and human interaction and lunch breaks.
Yes.
And just being a human with people.
Yes.
And you can't do that.
I completely agree. And there is a more optimistic school of thought. What people will want after this ends is they'll demand it. They'll feed on human interaction because they've been denied it. So it might be that we suddenly end up with, that people really will go back. But the point is, online training is cheaper. Always has been, always will be. And there will always be decision makers who will be more concerned with the money than anything else. So, even now, one of the reasons why I think just over 2 years ago, I went from an entirely full calendar because I was doing work sort of 60, 70% for a training company. I went from that to nothing because I stopped working for them. And within weeks, I had a full calendar again. Now, part of that is because I'm brilliant and because people seek out brilliance. Yeah. But part of it is because I'm not as expensive as most of the big training companies, because I don't have premises, I don't employ staff. For all the disadvantages of just being me, my ego can never get that big, because I know some people use me because I'm cheaper than company who I will not name. You've got to be clear that even before the end of the world, money always talks. And I think people have spent 10 weeks at home already. They're going to spend more. And the people who write the checks, that shows you my age, checks. I used check as an example on a training course at the start of the year. And a person genuinely looked at me and said, I don't know what a check looks like. And I was like, get out. So old. But that, I think that will play its part. I'm not a glasses half full person, but I think it's like, I have to work out what my plan B is. I know what my plan A is. I go back to doing what I did before. Yeah. But I have to work out what my plan B is, because I think it's quite possible that ways of working will change.
So do you have a plan B? What would, you've done this for a long time. Would you go back to being a consultant? Do you class yourself as a practitioner now, or do you think are you an out and out trainer? Would you go and run an emu farm?
Emus. Oh no, he'd kick you to death. Actually, no. I think ostriches are the violent ones. Emus. Let's not get sidetracked. I know I'm the one sidetracking. I think I've got at least one more big change. I'm 47, so I've got plenty of years left, unless of course I get the Rona. But I think I could do something else. I could go back and be a data protection officer, because I do a lot of data protection officer like things, but I haven't been a full-time data protection person for one organization since 2011. And then I was working 2 days a week. So I could go and do that. And there is at least one person who has said they will employ me. You
only need one.
Yeah. So if she gets a vacancy, that might happen. But I don't know. I think the problem is, what I don't want to do is full-time online training. I'll do that now, and I'll do that to the absolute best of my abilities. And I'm quite proud of some of the stuff I've managed to do over the last 10 weeks in terms of it genuinely being pretty good stuff. But I don't want to do it full time. If that's me for the next 5 years, I'll be applying for jobs or being a consultant.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I spoke to somebody the other day, and it had 8 Zoom calls, MS. So exhausted, because it's so much harder to concentrate. You're always like, what did he say? Did he say me? And then he'd sort of second guessing. It's just not natural. It's not a nice place to be.
No. I'd rather work
the other thing I wanted to talk about, I like that on your website you've got a mischief section.
Yes.
Which is where you investigative blogs, and you go in there, abuse people. The two questions. Wow, challenge. So the 2 questions I had were what do you look for when something piques your interest,
mm-hmm.
and then do you ever have an end goal, or do you just because one of them obviously you close down a business. We had the individual that we all know that we won't talk about, that had the foreword of his book written by somebody who we won't mention, who hadn't read the book, and all of those had substantial outcomes that probably did the world a little bit of good. Do you go into it with that mindset, or is it just something that you enjoy and you just like the investigative nature of it all?
It's always the same. It's always somebody talking nonsense. So I don't claim any credit for the author, because I think that the outcome of that was very serious complaints made to the publisher of his book, which I saw but didn't make. So I played a small, narrator's role in that more than anything. But it's just people talking nonsense, and people claiming expertise that they don't have. That's the blood in the water that I always smell. Now, obviously, that means any time I talk nonsense, people come after me, which is absolutely fair. But in terms of most of the blogs that I write, it's always the same. It's somebody who claims to know what they're talking about, and I know they don't. The revelation to me when I started working at the ICO was that I used to, before I went to the ICO, I worked in libraries. And it was, I'm very grateful to libraries. I went from being on the dole to having a job, and there's no better thing than that. So the jobs I got in libraries, I was really grateful for, but I didn't enjoy them. They were just jobs I did to earn money to pay rent. And when I got to the ICO, I really enjoyed it. And what I realized really quickly was how much of the reporting of data protection was nonsense. And because I knew about data protection and FOI, and I knew about how they worked, and the more I spent time in the sector, the more I knew about it, I could see how The Guardian, for example, always gets data protection wrong. They totally misreport it. The newspaper that reports data protection issues most accurately is the Daily Mail. So and people argue with me about this. The fact that there are columnists in the Daily Mail who I wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and it's totally not my politics. Their investigative reporting and journalism on data protection, and I don't know anything about any other subjects, but I know about data protection. So when I read a story in The Guardian and I read a story in the Daily Mail, I know the Daily Mail one is more likely to be accurate. And so that thing of when you see somebody else talking authoritatively, you don't normally know whether they're reporting things accurately.
Yeah.
But when it's data protection or FOI, I do. So if somebody comes along and says, I'm an expert, when they start to talk, I know whether they're talking nonsense. And as I say, leaving employment and becoming a trainer meant that I had no employer to embarrass. Nobody who would say, this is causing us trouble because you've just been slagging this person off. And it was a great release, because I was very loyal to the council that I worked for. And the last job that I did was the NHS. And you don't want to be embarrassed in the NHS. I was very bad at that job, but they treated me very well. And so I didn't want to let them down. So once I was freelance, it just started me digging into it. And it's just, I think, that people are reticent. They're reticent about exposing themselves and saying, well, I do know that you're talking rubbish because I know what I'm talking about. And again, that's a filter I don't have. If I see someone talking nonsense, I'll say so.
Can't argue with that.
A lot of people do. Hello to all of those who do.
So excuse me. Hopefully they're watching. Hopefully they take the time to watch and get to know you, and then maybe think, he picked on me, but I was a shyster, so maybe maybe they'll refriend you. It's not refriend, connections, isn't it? We're not friends.
I think it's unblock in a lot of cases.
Unblock,
yes.
Unblock, then let you back.
I don't know. I think the fact that I've made the people who blocked me on LinkedIn into a joke and say, if you take, I've said this several times now, so I'm not really doing it again. The people who block me on LinkedIn are the worst people in the sector. So I'm quite proud of those people. I don't want them back.
That's true. That's very
there are some people who I've offended, and I regret that. And especially with the way the world is now, I'm not going to get the opportunity to put it right. I have in two cases. There's two people who have taken the lockdown as an opportunity to come and say, we had that stupid argument. It was stupid, wasn't it? And I've been able to say, yes, and it was my fault. And so, there's a little bit of that. But the thing is, the idea that I've been blocked by all these people because I was rude to them is false. Most of the people in the sector who want nothing to do with me have blocked me because I pointed out that they didn't know what they were talking about. And maybe I didn't do that diplomatically. But there is a person who goes around saying, I'm very interested in robust debate, and I'm deliberately not doing his voice because I can do his voice. And all this kind of stuff. And he blocks people because he talks rubbish, and then people, and not just me, point it out. And I think, when you've got a sector with so many people in who do know what they're doing, it's quite reasonable to say you don't, mate. And
if you're going to post tripe content just to try and garner some likes, then you should expect to be savaged in the comments section if it's tripe. I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, but as I say, if people want to have a go at me on the same basis, I can't complain about it. I don't necessarily have to listen to them. I block people as well.
All fair and love and information rights.
What, pretty much. I mean, I have some complaints about unfairness, but let's not worry about that.
So before we go, is there anything coming up for Tim Turner? Any blogs in the pipeline? Is anything caught the eagle eye of the information rights Batman? Can we expect an expose anytime soon?
There's a couple, but they're all very much on the very beginning. And there's a few which are almost historic. Like there's a really funny thing about Liz Denham taking a bunch of her staff off to America and spending tens of thousands of pounds, but it happened before the lockdown, and it's one of those things where can I write it up in a funny enough way that it's worth dredging up something that's like 3 or 4 months old, or would it be just maybe worth saying this person made an FOI request over here, you should have a look at it? But no, I mean, I have to say, I think that the last couple of months I have been, apart from the work I've been actively doing, incredibly unproductive, because there's an element of grief in, you know, the last working week I was in Yorkshire, then I was somewhere else, every day I was somewhere else. And, you know, that going from that to about 3 weeks of nothing. I mean, I've got loads of work now, but it's all remote. I think what I'd like to do is spend more time writing. I've got 4 things that I've not finished, long form things, which I haven't finished. I've got an audit guide. I've got a data protection officer handbook, things like that. So rather than wanting to do more like, you know, digging dirt on people, I want to get those nailed and work out, are these things I should give away because I've given stuff away in the past, or are these things I could actually sell, and can I perhaps shift away from some of the training, do a bit of online, and then try and do those instead. So I haven't got any, you know, grand revelations at the moment. Everyone's locked down. No one's doing anything down.
Everyone's misbehaving.
No,
I think there's a reasonable market for some proper detailed guidance in terms of a book, in terms of the role of the DPO. Because I think there's a couple of good books. So there's Suzanne Dibble's GDPR for Dummies and Stephen M's guide to sort of GDPR, but nobody's really gone in on the role of the DPO. So if you fancy writing a book on, you know, how to be a proper effective DPO, I think that could be.
I mean, I've more or less done it. It's just a case of getting it finished and working out. But like I say, one of the problems I think I've got is I'm still kind of thinking about what I had. I'm thinking, yeah, fundamentally, I do want to go back and just do face-to-face training again. And so sometimes that you know, is a bit of a block on creativity. Whereas I know some people, there's a couple of people who I know who are just burning through stuff because they regard this as such an opportunity. And I think I need to plug into that mentality more. Or somebody needs to do something totally ridiculous and then I can go after them on it.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time watching Can't Pay, Take It Away. If you can't play, we'll take it away. And thinking of like all the important things that I could be doing. I've got like a list on the wall that I don't change. It's too easy. You sat in one place all day. It's too easy to just.
We started drinking now.
Get drunk and not pay any attention. And on that note, I have actually got work to do. Not this is work as well, obviously. This is.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Professional important stuff. Tim Turner, 2040 training. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
Taking the time to talk to me. If we don't see you before, we'll see you at IRMS in November, if we're allowed out.
I was going to say, if I could put a bet on, I know where I'd put my money. Anyway, let's not worry about that.
Awesome. Take care, man.
Thank you.
See you soon.
See ya.
Bye.
God.